My family accidentally skipped my birthday. By 3 a.m., I ended their lives as they knew them. The steak on my plate was cold. But the $200 charge on my banking app was still burning a hole in my brain. I sat in a private dining room designed for 40 people. 40 empty chairs. 40 sets of silver that would never be used. My hands weren't just shaking. They were vibrating. I hit refresh on the family group chat. Brother, 7:47 p.m. Don't wait up. Everyone's at my promotion party instead. Catch you later. Dad, 7:52 p.m. Hey son, put the drinks for the group on your card. Consider it a birthday gift to your brother. Hope that's fine. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My throat felt like it was filled with dry sand. I looked at the Happy 34th cake sitting under the flickering overhead light. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt a strange cold click behind my eyes. A dissociation so sharp it felt like ice water in my veins. I'm a forensic accountant. I find people's ghosts in their spreadsheets. I've spent 10 years protecting this family's investments, ignoring the smell of rot because family is family. I opened my laptop right there at the table. I didn't even wait to get home. The first thing I looked at was the grandfather's trust. The one my dad had been managing for 8 months since the youngest cousin turned 25. I hit the first layer of the firewall. My father's birthday was my password. He's that predictable. The screen loaded. I stopped breathing. The balance wasn't $890,000. It was $240,000. I saw the transfer trail. $450,000 moved 6 months ago. The recipient? My brother's Penthouse Fund account. That's when I realized they didn't just forget my birthday. They were celebrating the fact that they'd successfully finished robbing me. As I scrolled deeper into my father's private ledger, I saw a folder titled with my name and social security number. I opened it and my heart stopped. It wasn't just a trust fund. They had been using my identity to fund a life I wasn't invited to. The waiter tried to clear my plate, but I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. He saw my face and backed away without a word. I wasn't a customer anymore. I was a hunter. I opened the folder labeled with my social security number. My breath hitched. Inside were digital copies of 3 credit card applications, Amex Gold, a Chase Sapphire, and a high-limit Citi card. All of them were opened 2 years ago. All of them listed my parents' suburban address as the primary residence. Total debt, $89 for $12.22. I scrolled through the statements. Furniture for my brother's new place. A $12,000 down payment on a boat I'd never seen. A recurring $400 monthly charge for a country club membership my father bragged about joining. They hadn't just stolen my inheritance. They had been harvesting my credit score like a crop. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a photo from the group chat. It was my brother, grinning, holding a bottle of Ace of Spades champagne. My father had his arm around him, beaming. The caption read, "To the real winner of the family. VP at 30! Sky's the limit!" I looked at that photo, then back at my screen. I pulled up my brother's VP announcement on LinkedIn and cross-referenced it with the company's public filings. The VP of Operations title he'd been bragging about? It didn't exist. He was a regional sales support associate. His salary wasn't $300K, it was $140K. The math didn't just fail. It imploded. He had purchased a $1.2 million penthouse on a $140K salary with $40K in student debt. The $450,000 loan from my grandfather's trust wasn't a gift. It was the only thing keeping him out of foreclosure. I felt a surge of nausea. I wasn't just the reliable extra in this family. I was the collateral. I was the piggy bank they broke open when they wanted to play pretend. I started a new master document on my desktop. I titled it The Audit. I spent the next hour dragging and dropping every wire transfer, every forged signature, and every fraudulent credit application into a single, searchable PDF. I highlighted my father's transfers in blood red. Then I saw one more file at the bottom of the server. It was an encrypted PDF from my mother's email. I cracked the encryption in 4 minutes. It was a series of tax documents she'd filed on behalf of the family business. She had been claiming me as a dependent and a consultant for 3 years, writing off $60,000 in losses against my name. My entire family was a criminal enterprise, and I was the unsuspecting front man. I looked at the clock. 11:45 p.m. The restaurant was closing. I stood up, tucked my laptop under my arm, and walked out into the cold night air. I didn't go home. I drove to my office, the only place where I had access to the high-level forensic software that could track offshore movements. As the software began to map the final destination of the missing $240,000, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a private text from my brother. He wasn't gloating anymore. He wrote, "I know you're looking at the accounts. If you say a word, I'll tell Mom about the discrepancy in your own tax returns. We're all in this together, bro. Don't ruin it." I stopped walking in the middle of the dark parking lot. My brother's text stared back at me, glowing in the dark. "We're all in this together, bro. Don't ruin it." It wasn't a request. It was a threat. He was trying to gaslight a forensic accountant into believing I was part of the crime because they'd used my name to commit it. My heart was thumping against my ribs so hard it was audible in the silence of the car. He thought he had me in a stalemate. He was wrong. He forgot that in a discrepancy, there's always a trail that proves who hit the send button. I sat in my office chair, the only light coming from the 3 monitors in front of me. I pulled the IP logs for the tax filings my mother had submitted. I cross-referenced the metadata on the fraudulent credit card applications. Every single digital fingerprint pointed to one location, my father's home office. Every consultant loss she'd claimed, the funds were routed back into a secret account, tied to my brother's penthouse mortgage. They weren't just stealing. They were framing me as the mastermind. I felt the dissociation kick in again, that cold, surgical detachment. I stopped being their son. I stopped being his brother. I was just the auditor now. I pulled up my father's investment portfolio. For years, he'd been taking loans from our elderly aunts and uncles, pension money, retirement savings, promising them a 10% return. I followed the $1.2 million trail. It didn't go to stocks. It didn't go to bonds. It went to a series of high-stakes gambling withdrawals at a casino in Atlantic City, and the remaining went toward my brother's VP lifestyle. My father was running a Ponzi scheme on his own siblings. I looked at the clock. 1:15 a.m. My phone buzzed again. Another group chat notification. Mom, empty room Natalie, me, is probably asleep. Let's talk about the summer house. Dad says we can afford the down payment by July. The audacity made my stomach flip. The down payment they were talking about was the remaining $240,000 in the trust fund, money that belonged to my younger cousins. I spent the next hour building the nuclear file. I didn't just include the theft. I included the IP logs. I included the photos of the VP brother's penthouse. I included a side-by-side comparison of my father's official reports to the family versus the actual bank balances. I highlighted the forged signatures. I zoomed in on the date the $4,200 dinner was charged to my card. The same night they were celebrating with stolen money. I created a file-sharing link. I titled the folder, The Truth About the Promotion. I opened the family group chat, all 40 of them. My aunts who had lost their pensions. My cousins who were waiting for their inheritance. My mother, the consultant specialist. My father, the patriarch. I hovered my finger over the paste button. Just as I was about to hit send, my phone rang. It was my father. His voice was unusually calm, almost a whisper. He said, "I'm standing outside your apartment, son. We need to talk about the accident that's going to happen to your career if that link goes live." I looked at the security feed on my phone. My father's black SUV was idling at the curb outside my building. He didn't know I was still at the office. He thought he could corner me in the hallway, play the patriarch card, and intimidate me into silence. "I'm not at home, Dad," I said, my voice as flat as a dial tone. The silence on the other end lasted 5 seconds. "Then where are you?" "I'm at work. I'm looking at the Atlantic City withdrawals. I'm looking at the $1.2 million you siphoned from Aunt Martha and Uncle Jim. And I'm looking at the 3 credit cards you opened in my name." I heard his breath hitch. The calm mask was slipping. "Now listen to me, you ungrateful—" "No," I interrupted. "You listen. You didn't just forget my birthday. You used my credit to buy the champagne for the party you didn't invite me to. You stole my name to build a life for a son you actually like. We did it for the family," he hissed. "Your brother needed a win." He was struggling. "You've always been the stable one. You don't need the money like he does." "I don't need my own identity?" I asked. The rage was starting to burn through the cold. "I don't need a credit score that isn't in the 500s because you wanted a boat? If you go public with this, the bank takes the penthouse. Your brother loses his job. I go to jail. Is that what you want? To destroy your own blood over a dinner bill?" "I'm not destroying the family, Dad. I'm just auditing it." I hung up. I didn't wait for him to call back. I blocked his number. I turned back to the monitors. I needed one more piece of evidence to seal the coffin. I went into the firm's deep search database. If my brother was a regional sales support associate, I wanted to see his expense reports. What I found was the final nail. My brother hadn't just used the stolen trust money for the penthouse. He had been reimbursing himself for fake travel, expenses at his company using a shell company my father had set up. They weren't just running a Ponzi scheme on the family. They were embezzling from a Fortune 500 company. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was a federal crime. If I stayed silent now, I wasn't just a victim. I was an accomplice after the fact. I looked at the group chat. 2:28 a.m. My brother posted one last message. "Last call for drinks. Natalie, hope you enjoyed your solo cake. Some of us are meant for bigger things." I felt a ghost of a smile. He was right. He was meant for a much bigger sell. I pasted the link. I hit send. The blue bar crawled across the screen. 10%, 50%, 90%. Sent! I watched the read receipts start to pop up. 1, 5, 12, 30. Then my screen went black. A notification appeared that I didn't recognize. Remote access initiated by admin PC. My father wasn't just a gambler. He had a back door into my firm's server. The screen was a void. A single white cursor blinked in the center, mocking me. Remote access initiated by admin PC. Panic flared in my chest for exactly 3 seconds. Then the forensic accountant in me took over. My father was smart, but he was old school. He thought remote access meant he could just delete the files and the problem would go away. He didn't realize that the second I hit send in that group chat, the link was cached on 40 different devices. He wasn't deleting the evidence. He was just confirming his guilt. I grabbed my laptop and hardwired it into the firm's mainframe. Bypassing the compromised Wi-Fi, my fingers flew across the keys, a frantic race against the man who gave me my name. I didn't try to kick him out of the system. Instead, I opened a screen record and a packet sniffer. I watched him in real time. I watched his cursor hover over the audit folder. I watched him try to drag it to the trash. I watched him frantically searching for the source logs of the Atlantic City. Withdrawals. He was sweating. I could feel it through the screen. Then a chat box popped up on my monitor. Not a group chat, a direct system-level command line message from him. Admin PC, delete it. Now, I'm giving you one last chance to save this family. If you don't, I'll tell the medical board about your sister's prescriptions, and I'll tell your firm you've been using their servers for personal vendettas. You'll be disbarred before the sun comes up. I stared at the screen. My sister. My quiet, perfect sister, who was a pediatric nurse. He was willing to burn his own daughter just to keep the golden sun in his penthouse. The noose is already tight, Dad, I whispered to the empty office. I didn't delete a thing. Instead, I sent a command to the firm's security team. System breach in progress. Terminate all remote sessions and log IP source for law enforcement. Then I turned back to my phone. The group chat was no longer silent. It was a digital riot. Aunt Martha, 2:41 a.m. Is this real? Natalie, tell me this is a joke. This says my retirement fund was used for a down payment in April. I was told that money was in a high-yield bond. Cousin Leo, 2:43 a.m. Wait, look at page 14. The trust fund signature. That's not my handwriting. Someone forged my name to release the funds. Brother, 2:45 a.m. Natalie is having a breakdown. Don't click the link. It's a virus. He's bitter because he was alone on his birthday. He's making it all up. I didn't respond to my brother. I didn't need to. Because at 2:47 a.m., my uncle, the one who works as a senior VP, at the very bank my brother used, posted a single screenshot. It was an internal transaction, record confirming the wire transfer from the grandfather's trust into my brother's personal account. Uncle Jim, 2:48 a.m. It's not a virus. It's a confession. My office is opening an official fraud investigation at 9 a.m. God help you both. I felt the weight of the night finally start to crush me. I leaned back in my chair, watching the read receipts for my father's system threat climb to 40. He had sent his blackmail attempt to the entire group by mistake in his panic. The silence in the office was broken by a heavy thud against the glass front door of the building. I looked at the security monitor. My father wasn't at my apartment anymore. He was downstairs. And he wasn't alone. My brother was with him, his VP suit wrinkled, his face twisted in a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. My brother didn't have a laptop. He had a heavy iron tire iron. He looked directly into the security camera. His eyes bloodshot and screamed my name. Then he swung. The glass didn't shatter. It was reinforced. But the notification on my phone made my blood turn to ice. Motion detected. Private office entrance. They weren't trying to get through the front. They already had a key to the back. The sound of the back door clicking open echoed through the vents like a gunshot. My father didn't just have remote access to my computer. He had the spare key I'd given him 3 years ago for emergencies. I didn't move. I couldn't. I sat in the glow of the triple monitors, watching the motion sensor logs turn red. My office is at the end of a long, narrow hallway. There's only one way in and one way out. Natalie. My brother's voice bounced off the industrial walls. It wasn't the voice of a VP. It was the screech of a cornered animal. I know you're up there. You think you're so smart? You just destroyed everything. I reached out and hit the record button on my desk mic. I wanted the firm's security server to catch every word. You destroyed it yourself, Leo, I said. My voice projected through the office intercom. The second you spent money that didn't belong to you, it was over. I just turned on the lights. I heard footsteps sprinting down the hall. Heavy, uneven. The tire iron scraped against the metal doorframe as they turned the corner. My father pushed past Leo, stopping at the threshold. He looked 10 years older than he had at dinner. His eyes were darting between my monitors, seeing the logs of his failed breach. End it, my father breathed, his voice trembling. Call the family. Tell them you were high. Tell them it was a revenge prank because we missed the dinner. We can still fix the bank records if we move fast. Fix them with what, Dad? More stolen money from Aunt Martha? Leo stepped forward, the iron bar gripped in both hands. You don't get it. I lose the penthouse, I lose my career. I'm not going back to a cubicle because you felt lonely on your birthday? You're not going back to a cubicle at all. Leo, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I sent the audit to your HR department's ethics and compliance tip line 10 minutes ago. They already have the shell company records. Leo's face went from red to a sickly translucent white. The tire iron slipped an inch in his grip. You did what? It's an automated system, Leo. Once the file is uploaded, it's time-stamped. It can't be retracted. The silence that followed was heavy. Then my phone chimed. It was a notification from the family group chat. Cousin Sarah, 3:12 a.m. I just called the police. They're asking for the address of the restaurant where the fraud occurred. Natalie, where are you? My father heard the chime. He saw the look on my face. He realized the patriarch was dead. The family was gone. There was only the law now. He turned to Leo, his voice cold and desperate. Give me the bar. Dad? Leo stammered. Give me the bar! If he's incapacitated, we can claim he's unstable. We can delete the local drive before the cops get here. It's the only way! My father reached for the weapon. My own father was ready to assault me to save a balance sheet. I felt a surge of nausea so violent I had to lean against the desk. Oh. As Leo handed the iron to my father, the office elevators chimed. The doors slid open, but it wasn't the police. It was my mother. She was holding a manila envelope, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes were hard as flint. She looked at my father and said, Don't bother, Howard. I already called the feds. And I brought the other ledger. The tire iron hit the industrial carpet with a dull thud. My father's hand stayed frozen in midair, reaching for a weapon that no longer mattered. My mother stepped into the office. The manila envelope clutched to her chest like a shield. She didn't look at me. She looked at the man she'd shared a bed with for 35 years. The other ledger? My father's voice was a ragged whisper. Martha, what are you talking about? The one you kept in the floor safe under the guest room rug, she said, her voice trembling but certain. The one where you tracked the kickbacks from the construction contracts in the 90s. The one you told me was just business notes. I felt the room tilt. This went deeper than a trust fund. This was a lifetime of professional rot. Mom, stay back, I said, finally finding my voice. I stood up, keeping the desk between me and the two men who looked ready to snap. I'm done staying back, Natalie, she said, finally turning to me. Her eyes were red, but the clarity in them was terrifying. I saw the link. I saw the credit cards you found. I knew they were using your name for the consulting fees, but I told myself it was just for tax strategy. I didn't know they were stealing from the kids. I didn't know about Martha's pension. You knew enough, Leo screamed, his voice cracking. You signed the papers, Mom? You enjoyed the summer house. You're just as guilty as us. I was a fool, Leo, not a thief, she snapped. She threw the envelope onto my desk. It slid across the wood and hit my keyboard. That's the offshore routing numbers. He didn't lose all the money in Atlantic City, Natalie. He's been moving it to an account in the Cayman Islands for years. He was planning to leave us. Both of us. My father's face didn't just go pale, it went gray. The family man persona didn't just crack, it disintegrated. I was doing it for our retirement. My father roared, taking a step toward her. You were doing it for yours, she countered. My phone vibrated on the desk. The family chat was a blur of notifications, but one stood out. Uncle Jim, 3:22 a.m. Cops are at the house. They said Howard's SUV is gone. Natalie, if you can hear this, lock your doors. They're coming for you. They're already here, Jim, I whispered, though no one could hear me. I looked at my monitors. The security feed showed 2 patrol cars pulling into the firm's parking lot, their blue and red lights painting the brick walls in rhythmic flashes of emergency. My father saw the lights reflecting in the window behind me. He looked at the tire iron on the floor, then at the envelope on my desk, then at me. You really did it, he said, and for the first time he sounded small. You destroyed the name. Over a birthday. No, Dad, I said, reaching for the desk phone to buzz the security gate. I saved mine. The sirens grew louder, screaming as they climbed the ramp to the executive level. But as the police burst through the back door, my brother didn't move toward me or the exit. He lunged for my mother's manila envelope. He didn't want to hide the evidence. He wanted to swallow the only leverage he had left. As the officers tackled him, he screamed, It wasn't Dad's idea! It was hers! She's the one who told us to use Natalie's name! The office exploded into motion. 4 officers swarmed over the desk, pinning Leo to the floor before he could rip the envelope. He was sobbing now, a guttural, pathetic sound that filled the room. She told us! Leo shrieked, his face pressed against the carpet. The consultant files! Mom showed us how to do the routing so it wouldn't hit our personal returns. She's playing you, Natalie! I looked at my mother. She stood perfectly still as the blue and red lights strobed across her face. She didn't flinch. She didn't defend herself. She just stared at the handcuffs being ratcheted onto my father's wrists. Is it true? I asked. The words felt heavy, like lead in my mouth. Did you show them how to use my name? My mother finally looked at me. Her expression was unreadable, a mix of pity and something cold, something ancient. I protected this family for 30 years, Natalie, she whispered. In this world, you're either the one holding the pen or the one being written about. I wanted to make sure we were the ones holding the pen. She wasn't a victim. She was the architect. My father was the gambler, my brother was the greedy front man, but my mother was the one who knew where the bodies were buried. Because she dug the holes, one of the officers approached me. Are you the caller? Natalie? I am, I said, my voice sounding like it belonged to a stranger. We need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. We have the local files, but we're going to need a full export of that server you were tracking. I nodded, moving like a robot. I began the data dump to an external drive. My father was let out first. He didn't look at me. He looked at the floor, his shoulders slumped. The patriarch reduced to a frail old man in a wrinkled windbreaker. But as they led my mother out, she stopped. She leaned in close to my ear, her breath smelling like the expensive wine they'd Been drinking at my brother's party. Check the last page of that ledger, Natalie, she hissed. The one from the safe. See who the beneficiary of the Cayman account is. It's not your father. And it's not me. The police led her away before I could respond. I turned back to the desk. My hands were numb. I opened the manila envelope and flipped to the very back. Past the routing numbers. Past the shell companies. Past the offshore registrations. I reached the final page. It was a notarized letter of instruction for the Cayman Island. Funds. The hidden $240,000 that was missing from the trust. I read the name on the document. I read it 4 times. The beneficiary wasn't my brother. It wasn't my parents. The name on the account belonged to a woman I'd never heard of. A woman named Elena Vance. Attached to the back of the page was a birth certificate from 3 years ago. The father's name was Leo, but the mother's name was my ex-fiancée. The name on the birth certificate didn't just hurt. It erased the last 3 years of my life. Elena Vance. The mother, Claire. My Claire. The woman I was supposed to marry 3 years ago until she suddenly got cold feet and vanished from my life, claiming she needed to find herself in Europe. I looked at the date of birth. Elena was born exactly 9 months after Claire broke our engagement. My brother didn't just steal my identity. He didn't just steal my inheritance. He stole my family. He had been supporting my ex-fiancée and their secret child using my stolen credit cards and the money he'd siphoned from my grandfather's trust. I felt a cold, oily slick of bile rise in my throat. Every late night at the office Leo had bragged about. Every business trip my parents had praised him for. He was with her. He was playing house with the woman I'd bought a ring for, using my money to buy the diapers and the formula. I grabbed my phone and unmuted the family chat. It was a graveyard of deleted messages and legal threats, but I didn't care. I scrolled to my brother's contact. Me, 3:42 a.m. I found the birth certificate. I found Elena. A minute passed. Then another. The typing bubbles appeared, vanished, and appeared again. Brother, 3:44 a.m. Natalie, please! Don't bring her into this. She didn't know where the money was coming from. She thought I was the one who made it. She thinks I'm the VP. 3:45 a.m. She knew who I was. Leo. She knew whose name was on the credit card she was swiping at the pediatrician. Brother, 3:46 a.m. Dad told me to do it! He said you were too weak to keep her. That the family needed a legacy, and you couldn't provide it. He said if I took care of her, he'd make sure I was the one who inherited the firm. I dropped the phone. The office felt like it was shrinking, the walls closing in. My father hadn't just been gambling with money. He'd been engineering a better version of his lineage. He traded my happiness for a grandchild he could control. I turned to the lead officer who was waiting by the door. I need to add another charge, I said, my voice sounding like cracking glass. Interstate custodial interference and grand larceny. There's a woman and a child. I have the address. I didn't wait for him to respond. I sat back down at my computer. I had one more audit to perform. If Claire was in on this, if she had been knowingly using my stolen identity to fund her life with my brother, she wasn't a victim. She was a co-conspirator. I pulled up the credit card statements one last time. I looked for the delivery addresses. There it was. A small, expensive condo in a town 2 hours away. The utilities were in my name. The lease was in my name. I pulled up the smart home security logs for the condo, logs I had access to because, on paper, I was the owner. I clicked the front door camera history from earlier tonight. At 8 p.m., while I was sitting alone in that restaurant, a car pulled into the driveway. My mother got out. She wasn't holding a manila envelope. She was holding a birthday gift. And she wasn't alone. The video feed was crystal clear. My mother didn't look like a woman caught in a fraud scandal. She looked like a doting grandmother. She walked up to the front door of the condo I was paying for, carrying a large box wrapped in blue paper. The door opened and there was Claire. She looked happy. She looked healthy. She looked exactly like the woman I'd spent 3 years mourning. Behind her, a toddler with my brother's eyes toddled into view. My mother knelt, kissed the child, and handed Claire a stack of cash, the kind of untraceable cash my father had been withdrawing from Aunt Martha's pension. They were all there. While I was staring at 40 empty chairs, my entire family was 2 hours away, celebrating my brother's promotion and the child they'd hidden from me. They hadn't forgotten my birthday. They had just moved it. I closed the laptop. The silence in the office was final. I gave the police the address. I gave them the logs. I gave them the names. 3 months later, the fallout wasn't like the movies. There was no big dramatic courtroom speech. It was a slow, agonizing death by paperwork. My father pleaded guilty to 3 counts of wire fraud and 2 counts of identity theft. Because of his age and the restitution he made using the last of the Cayman funds, he got 5 years. He'll likely die in a federal wing. My brother lost the penthouse, the VP job, and his freedom. He's serving 3 years for embezzlement. Claire was charged as an accessory, but she took a plea deal, testifying against my mother in exchange for probation. She's living in a 1-bedroom apartment now, working a retail job, finding out what life is like when you aren't swiping someone else's soul. My mother, she was the smartest of them all. She claimed coercion. She claimed she was a victim of my father's abuse. She walked away with a suspended sentence and a reputation so toxic that even her own sisters won't speak to her. I got my check. $127,943.17. My portion of the trust, plus interest, plus the restitution the court ordered from my brother's liquidated assets. I spent it on a house, a small place with a garden and a gate that requires a code only I know. I'm sitting on my porch now. It's my 35th birthday. My phone is on Do Not Disturb. There are no balloons. There is no $4,200 dinner. I have a single cupcake with 1 candle. I look at the empty chair across from me and I don't feel sad. I feel clean. The audit is over. The books are balanced. My brother texted me today from the prison tablet. Are you happy now? You're all alone. You have nothing. I didn't reply noted this time. I didn't reply at all. I just blew out the candle and watched the smoke disappear into the night air. Being alone isn't the same as being abandoned. I'd rather be alone with the truth than in a room full of people who only love the person they're robbing.